Typically, people believe that a setting powder can prevent under eye creasing.
For both sides, I use the same setting powder, but one side is creased and the other side is not. Well, look at my eyes on this side and look at my eyes on this side.
In this video, I will explain to you guys how and why your technique is causing under eye creasing, as well as why setting powders will not stop under eye creasing. Let's just get started without further ado. I'm going to do a comparison on under my eyes using the same powder on both sides.
On this side, I will do a regular technique that you usually do to set your under eyes. And on this side, I will do my technique with some tips and tricks that could prevent your under eyes from creasing.
Before we get into the makeup part, let me explain something. Hydrating your under eyes is one of the most important things to do before applying makeup.
We can compare our eyes to balloons. When you drain water from balloon, they shrink and become wrinkly. However, when you fill them up with water, they expand and become nice and smooth again. Our under eye area follows the same concept. So when you hydrate and moisturize your under eye area, it helps to create a smooth base that prevents creasing.
My favorite product to hydrate under my eyes
Is L'Oreal Paris Revita Left Derm. The reason I like this product because I get instant result. The serum contains 1.5% pure hyaluronic acid, 1% pure caffeine eye serum to visibly replump, brighten, and reduce corals feet. Using the triple roller applicator, you get a full eye contour massage that reduces fine lines and smooths out under the eyes. This serum makes the eyes look much younger, less tired, and it's fragrance free. Then I go with this primer for my under eyes. This is actually a eyeshadow primer. I use this for my under eyes. Trust me, it works.
I use L'Oreal Revita Left Derm throughout the week, and I use this one from Basic Beauty before makeup.
This primer grabs makeup for all day wear and keeps foundation and makeup looking fresh, plump, moisturized, restores, and energized without looking oily.
Before we jump into concealer part, look at this side. It looks more moisturized and hydrated. Compared to this side, it looks a little bit dry, and that's the first step to prevent under eye creasing.
Whenever I apply foundation to the areas on my skin that creases a lot, it contributes to the reason why it creases if we apply too much makeup to those areas. I avoid placing foundation under my eyes because concealer is like a very similar product to foundation. As I will be using concealer only, I don't like using foundation on my under eyes. I will apply foundation all over the side of my face, including the under eyes.
As on this side,
I will apply foundation on the area that needs coverage, avoiding the under eye area. On this side, I like to focus it on this area and making sure it's nice and blended. And I like to just avoid the foundation on those areas where I normally crease, such as around the inner corners, outer corners, around my nose, and around my laugh line. As you can see, this side with no foundation under my eyes look very clean, smooth compared to this side where you can see the foundation has a little crease under my eyes. When applying concealer, it's important to keep two things in mind. You should know the type of concealer you're using and what techniques are you using. Generally speaking, dry concealers like matte or creamy concealers tend to crease more than liquid concealers due to their lack of flexibility. That means they tend to settle in the under eye creases but don't move because they're so thick. So you want a concealer that is a bit more liquid side. On this half, I will use this concealer from It Cosmetics Bye Bye Under Eyes. It's a creamy form of concealer.
and on this side, I'll use this concealer from LA Girl
Pro Concealer, which is a liquid concealer.
The goal is to simply cover up all the darkness around your eyes
Without caking it up. While applying concealer, you want to keep a balance between using too much product and not enough product. In order to hide the discoloration and brightening the area, concealer should be used where it tends to be darker on the skin, which is the area around the inner corners of the eyes. Your focus should be the area below where the creases happens. So if you press on your skin under your eyes, you can feel a bone structure. This bone structure is where you want to put concealer, since the skin is usually smoother than the skin closer to the lash line. So once you feel that bone structure under your eyes, then place a small amount of concealer on this area depending on how much discoloration you want to cover up. And to give my eyes a little bit left, I like to apply a small amount on this part of my eyes, which is the outer corners.
Not to forget, another key is the blending part.
You need to pay attention and make sure to have a damp beauty sponge to blend it out. Always keep in mind that the skin around your eyes is quite delicate. So the water in the sponge really helps under the eyes to avoid creases, especially if you have dry under eyes. And if you have an oily under eye, I recommend you use a flat concealer brush. As you can see, I blended the concealer from the bone structure and gradually bringing it upward. So I basically pull the concealer upwards toward the lash line to stop the concealer from settling in the area of my under eye that is prone to creasing, because we want to place less concealer there. I'm literally pressing and blending upward and making sure it looks smooth and nice. The concealer is full coverage, but it's more like liquid concealer, so it blends really smoothly and it still gives you that full coverage. So as you can see, there's a significant difference between these two under eyes. I'm using the same concealer that I used on the other side and the same sponge that I've been using on this side. And this is just how it's supposed to be done and how everybody just do it normally, and I'm doing the same way so I can show you guys a difference. It is obvious that the creasing is more extreme on this side because the concealer is literally not moving after sinking into my fine lines and my creases. And on this side, you can see it's less noticeable since we used the primer and a liquid concealer that can be easily moved around to avoid having it sink too deeply into the fine lines and into my under eye creases.
Another reason why a concealer crease is a technique in which a setting powder is used. And you must pay attention to this because this is another very important part.
As you can see, there's still some creasing under my eyes. And if I don't get rid of it before applying setting powder, I'm basically setting it the way it appears with the creases. So this is how we prevent that from happening. I'm going to use the same sponge that I used for the concealer, and I'm going to use the other side of the sponge to set my under eyes, basically the clean side for the powder. So first I like to get a little bit of the powder by dipping the sponge into the powder, and I grab a small amount and press that sponge on the back of my hand to get rid of the excess powder right before I place it under my eyes. Before applying the setting powder, first I like to use the other side of the sponge, which I blend the concealer with, to blend out the creasing. Then immediately I flip the sponge to set under my eyes. I prefer to work on one side at a time to prevent creasing while I'm setting one side. Here's how this side appears after using the setting powder. As you can see, the creases are a little less obvious and it has a really beautiful and smooth appearance. I'm going to set this side using the same powder and dipping the same sponge that I used to blend out the concealer on this side. I'm gonna dip this in the powder and get rid of the excess powder by pressing it on the back of my hand and then use it for my under eyes without blending out those concealer creases that was sitting there from previous. In comparison to this side where it's a little bit more smooth, you can see that creasing on this eye is clearly more obvious. You can also see that it's beginning to form creases under my eyes. This side is definitely has less product but still covers up my under eyes and the discoloration under my eyes. The reason setting powders don't stop creasing is because if you set those creases, they will remain there regardless of how much powder you put on top of it. That's why I think the next step is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but it has helped me and a lot of my clients. As a final step, I like to apply a finishing powder on top of everything I just applied. A finishing powder is also a form of a setting powder, but its purpose is to smooth out wrinkles and blur out the appearance of fine lines. I like to use Becca Hydro Mist Loose Powder as my finishing powder. So I like to take the sponge that I used. I'm gonna dip into this Becca powder and I'm gonna set it in the same direction that I set my concealer with the other powder. I love this powder because it's so hydrating and it gives me a smooth finish. Another reason I love this powder because it has a cold texture to it. So whenever I put it under my eyes, I feel like there's something cold touching under my eyes, and this definitely helps to not crease my under eyes. So now, as you can see, it appears a little bit more smooth and blurred on this side than it did before. So this technique really creates that blurring effect under the eyes, which is why I prefer using finishing powder since it goes further to ensure that the under eyes does not appear wrinkled or creased. However, you don't want to lay too much powder under the eyes because it can cause or it can settle on those fine lines and it can cause more creases under the eyes.
Also, depending on your skin type, you should choose a setting powder that works for you.
Depending on what your skin needs. There's so many variety of different type of powder out there.
And it can get a little bit confusing, and I understand that. And if you guys want me to make a video on picking the right powder, let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to make a video and help.
Make sure to watch this video. This is a very beginning and very simple makeup for every day or for someone never put makeup before, and this will just guide you from the beginning to the end. And if this video was helpful to you and gave you some guidance, give your girl a big thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, consider subscribing because I post every single week all about makeup and beauty. I will see you guys in my next video.